First of all, I'm delighted to introduce Iseult Ward. Iseult is the CEO and co-founder of Food Cloud. Food Cloud is a non-profit social enterprise working to tackle twin issues of food waste and food security by redistributing food from the food industry to a network of charity and community partners. Food Cloud works with over 850 charities across Ireland, and their technology supports 9,500 charities in the UK. Iseult often participates in media interviews across TV, radio, podcasts, and I'm delighted to welcome you today. Iseult, you'll be discussing the importance of reducing food waste as an effective way to combat climate change.
Thank you for the introduction, Conor, and I'm delighted with the opportunity to be here today with you. Oh, there we go. So to kick off, I will introduce the problem that Food Cloud is focused on solving. So over 33% of food produced is lost or wasted across the global food system. And that actually results in about 8 to 10% of global greenhouse gas emissions. In Ireland, 1 in 11 people are experiencing food poverty, and globally, this number is over 820 million people. If food waste was a country, it would be the third largest emitter of greenhouse gas emissions globally at 8%, just after China and the US. And this food waste hierarchy shows the prioritised actions that we can take to really tackle this problem, with source reduction at the top being the most effective in terms of the economic, social and environmental benefits that it can create, followed by feeding people, which is where our solutions focus. So we started in 2013 with a technology solution that connects supermarkets directly to local charities, so that any good food they have at the end of the day that's no longer saleable but still perfectly edible and safe to eat can be donated directly to local community groups. And then in 2015, we set up 3 warehouses in Ireland as well. So we've a hub in Cork, a hub in Dublin, and a hub in Galway. And this allows us to rescue larger quantities of surplus food that often become surplus further up the food supply chain. And they're quantities that would be too large for one charity to take. So we take them into our warehouses, break them down into more manageable quantities. You can see lots of volunteers hard at work there with some of our team members. And then they are distributed out to our network of community organisations across Ireland. And just to give you an idea of the growth we've experienced, so this is up to 2018. In 2019, we made some changes to how we work as an organisation. So we experienced a smaller amount of growth that year, but it was really to set ourselves up for an extraordinary year of growth. We didn't anticipate that year would also be impacted by COVID, where we saw significant supply chain shocks. So food that was destined for restaurants, for catering, all became surplus because the food would have been produced maybe over a year beforehand, and then that food would have no longer been able to reach its destination. So we saw a huge spike in the amount of food that we redistributed last year, and we were also able to redistribute this food because there was a significant increase in the demand from our community and charity partners across the country who needed to provide additional support to feed people who found themselves in much more challenging circumstances. And then again, this year, we're actually on track to grow even further. And we believe this is largely led by the increased interest in the food industry to address food waste from a sustainability point of view. So we're still seeing an increase in the amount of volumes. And this is very important for us as we try and grow the amount of food that we're distributing to really tackle the problem of food waste. So this year we're on, to date, we've distributed the equivalent of about 30 million meals across Ireland, the UK, and through our partners in the Czech Republic and Slovakia. And this has led to the avoidance of over 40,000 tonnes of CO2 equivalent. At this time as well, we've over 143 million meals equivalent that have been rescued since we started in 2014. That's led to the avoidance of over 200,000 tonnes of CO2 emissions. And by the end of October, we reached a record 80 meals per minute being distributed through our solutions. And it's very important to highlight the social impact that this creates and the role that food really does play in our society, even beyond providing sustenance and nutrition. We work with a very wide range of charities, from homeless services to drug addiction services, women's refuges. All of these organisations use food as a critical part of the services they provide. And this is one of the quotes we received this year. It's from the UN Veterans Association, an amazing organization of UN veterans that are spread across the country in different communities. And I think it really highlights the benefit that food can play in our society beyond simply providing the very important nutrition and sustenance that we need to make sure our communities have. So, being with Food Cloud has made a big difference to the members of the United Nations veterans. They feel like they're still active only now to a cause that's personal for them. And in addition, we couldn't do the work that we do if it wasn't for the amazing volunteers that help us. They help us in our warehouses and making sure we can get the food out to charities. And they also help us in gleaning, which is when a farmer harvests the food. There's often food left in the field that the machinery won't pick up. And it's not economically viable for them to pay people to go and harvest that food by hand. So instead, we have a few growers that are working with us across the country that will allow our volunteers to go in after the harvesting has taken place and rescue some really good, fresh Irish produce and make sure that that then makes it out to charities. And just to highlight the work we're doing internationally as well. So we have a partnership with a brilliant organisation in the UK called FairShare, who similarly to us run warehouses and hubs to rescue food from further up the food supply chain. And in 2015 and 16, we introduced our technology platform to them and have been working closely with them since so that they can redistribute food from supermarkets and retailers directly to charities as well as through their hubs. And this has meant that over 35% of the food that they've rescued over the last few years has actually been through our technology platform. And we're now, since 2019, after starting similar partnerships in Central Europe with the Czech Republic and Slovakia, supported by Tesco and the national food redistribution organisations there. And food redistribution plays a significant role internationally. There's an equivalent to Food Cloud in the warehousing model in 75 countries globally. And it really highlights the fact that we do have a lot of infrastructure in place internationally to increase the amount of food that we're redistributing so that we can create this positive environmental impact by preventing the food from going to waste, but also create a significant social impact as well. And our goal as a partner of many of these organizations is to, where we can, provide the technology and expertise to support them in increasing the amount of food that they can distribute. And we really believe that the importance of food redistribution will increase. So by 2050, we need 56% more calories to feed available to feed our growing populations. And food waste has been put forward as the number one solution to tackling climate change by Project Drawdown, a US-based research company, if we are to stay on the 1.5-degree trajectory. In addition, we're highlighting how those organizations that I showed previously have also been growing to increase their ability to address the problems that people face in communities globally around food insecurity. And it's incredibly important that Ireland and our international partners do focus on this, because we've all signed up to the UN Sustainable Development Goals, one of which is to halve food waste per capita by 2030. And just to give some perspective, in Ireland, we redistributed the equivalent of 7.5 million meals last year. And that was still less than 0.5% of Ireland's total food waste. So in Ireland, we're wasting an estimated 1 million tonnes of food annually. And the fact that only 0.5% of that problem was tackled through our solution last year shows that we need to see a step change in the amount of food we're redistributing, but we also need to see a step change in how we're actually approaching and tackling the problem of food waste. And this won't happen if there isn't support, if there isn't a supportive policy and legislative environment. And we are seeing a lot of positive developments in that lately, where at an international level, we have the UN Sustainable Development Goals. In Europe, we have the EU Farm to Fork strategy, which highlights food waste and also the solution to redistribute food and create a social benefit. It's highlighted in the Circular Economy Action Plan and also in the EU Waste Directive. And in Ireland, we're also seeing an increased focus on the problem of food waste from our Circular Economy Bill, which will put the National Food Waste Prevention Roadmap, which was first referenced in the Waste Action Plan for a Circular Economy, on a statutory footing, making the development of policy in relation to food waste prevention a legal requirement for government. In the Food Vision 2030 plan, the food waste hierarchy is followed. And this is incredibly important because we need to make sure that as we take on this massive problem of food waste, that we do it in the way that does create the most benefit for our environment, for society, and for our economy. It also highlights the role of redistribution in dealing with shocks that we may face. The best example being COVID, where we saw big supply chain shocks, but we also need to make sure that we have the right solutions in place to help us tackle future shocks as well. And also our climate action plan highlights the need to halve food waste by 2030 as well. So hopefully we're seeing the accelerated changes that are going to be necessary, especially over the next decade, as we really step up and tackle the problem of food waste, and recognizing that actually tackling this problem, being 8 to 10% of greenhouse gas emissions, has an opportunity to have a really significant impact on our journey to becoming, to having a much more favourable environment for our climate as well. So I'll leave you with our vision for 2030 for an equitable, inclusive, resilient and sustainable food system. And thank you so much for the opportunity to present to you today.
Iseult Ward, CEO and co-founder Food Cloud, thank you very much. It's shocking that 8 to 10% of food waste contributes to emissions, so we need to tackle that.